Welcome to the Super Memory for School program. My name is Wen An Kwa. I'm a teacher at Lung Thep Vinh High School. Today I will accompany you in the 12th grade history program. Lesson 1, the foundation of the New World Order after World War II from 1945 to 1949. The first section we'll study is the Yalta Conference in February 1945. The second section is the establishment of the United Nations. Let's find out together. First of all, we'll learn about the historical background and viewpoints. In the Yalta Conference in February 1945, an agreement among three powerful countries. First, we will look at the historical background. Since World War II had come to an end, there were several issues that had to be settled by the powerful Allied countries. The first is to quickly defeat the fascist countries. The second is rebuilding the world after the war. And the third one is distributing the spoils of war among winning countries. As a result of that, from February 4th to 11th, 1945, an international conference was held in Yalta, in the Soviet Union, with the attendance of three main Allied leaders, Premier Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union, President Franklin D. Roosevelt of the US, and Prime Minister Winston Churchill of the UK. The meeting brought out important issues that we're going to look at in the following part. First, it was necessary to annihilate Japan's militarism and German fascism to the root to quickly end the war. Within 2 or 3 months after defeating German fascism, the Soviet Union would fight against Japan. The second was the establishment of a United Nations organization to maintain world peace and security, as well as to make agreements about dividing the sphere of influence in Europe and Asia. At that time, in Europe, the Soviet Union occupied the regions of East Germany, East Berlin, and Eastern European countries. The American, British, and French armies occupied the regions of West Germany, West Berlin, and Western European countries. So at the time, the Soviet Union occupied Eastern Europe and America occupied Western Europe. Only Austria and Finland were neutral countries. At that time, in Asia, the conference accepted the conditions of the Soviet Union to join the war against Japan, which was first to preserve Mongolia. Second, in exchange, restored the rights that Russia had lost in the Russo-Japanese War in 1904. Third, at the time, the Soviet Union had to return to the southern Sakhalin and could occupy the 4 islands of the current archipelago. So Japan would belong to America. Then, in North Korea, the Soviet Union could occupy the north, and the American army could occupy the south, with the boundary set as the 38th latitude. Next, we will learn about other countries' spheres of influence. In the Yalta Conference, the division of garrisoning and spheres of influence among winning countries was related to world peace, security, and order in the future. Later on, significant decisions of the conference and its agreement became a framework of the New World Order. The Yalta's bipolar order is the balanced arrangement among powerful countries, including the Soviet Union and America. An important content stated in those agreements was the desire to establish an international organization, the United Nations. So, how was the United Nations established? Let's find out together. The establishment of the United Nations. What can we see? Not long after the Yalta Conference from April 25th to June 26th in 1945, 50 countries' representatives met at San Francisco, at that time to approve the charter and declare the establishment of the United Nations. It was not until October 24, 1945 that the charter was officially validated. The United Nations' first aim was to maintain world peace and security. The second was to develop friendly relations between countries around the world on the basis of respect for the equal rights and self-determination of nations. Next was the operating principle. There are 5 principles. First, it established the equality of sovereignty and self-determination of nations. The second is to respect the territorial integrity and political independence of all countries. The third is the non-interference in the internal affairs of any country. And fourth is to settle disputes by peaceful solutions. Finally, it is the peaceful coexistence and unanimity of the 5 large countries. The Charter states the United Nations system will consist of 6 agencies. First is the General Assembly. The second is the International Court. The third is the Security Council, the Trusteeship Council, the Secretariat, and the Economic Social Council. The General Assembly meets once a year to regulate the work and issues within the scope of the Charter. The Security Council plays an important role in maintaining world peace and security. Next will be the Secretariat, headed by the Secretary General with a 5-year term. Besides that, there are other professional agencies that help the United Nations, such as the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the Children's Fund. There are also other professional organizations. Next, we will learn about the role of the United Nations. First, it is an international forum that not only cooperates but also fights for world peace and security. Second, it promotes international friendship and cooperation to help nations in economic, cultural, and educational matters, as well as to make great efforts in resolving disputes and conflicts in many countries and regions. It also has a support program to help underdeveloped nations in terms of economy, culture, education, and humanity. By 2006, the United Nations had 192 members, and Vietnam became the 149th member of the United Nations in September 1977, until October 16, 2007, when Vietnam officially became a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for the term 2008 to 2009. After more than 43 years with the United Nations, Vietnam has been building its own brand, and that brand continues to strengthen and build a solid position to make Vietnam the pride of today's generation and the desire of international friends. And that success belongs not only to the intellectual, but also the diplomatic spirit of President Ho Chi Minh. Vietnam's political diplomacy well understands its positions as well as other countries. Therefore, we are always willing to cooperate and connect within the community. And to end the lesson, I would like to summarize with the following mind map. First, we will look at the Yalta Conference in February 1945, when World War II was coming to an end, and the Allied nations faced some problems that needed to be resolved. So, from February 4th to 11th, a conference was held in Yalta, Soviet Union, with the participation of the heads of three powerful nations. The first important point was to completely destroy German fascism and Japanese militarism. The second was the establishment of the United Nations. The third was the agreement in dividing the sphere of influence in Europe and Asia. As a consequence, it led to a new world order, the Yalta Bipolar Order, and the establishment of the United Nations from April 25th to June 26th. A conference was held in San Francisco at that time to approve the charter, and on October 24th, 1945, the charter officially took effect. The purpose was to maintain world peace and security as well as develop friendly relationships. The charter includes 5 principles and 5 main agencies. The United Nations has settled disputes peacefully and efficiently. As an international forum to promote friendly relations for mutual development, the United Nations had 92 member countries. In September 1977, Vietnam became the 149th member of the United Nations. That's the end of today's lesson. See you in the next history lessons of the Super Memory for Schools program.